Why we were arrested and what happened? We were a group of 11 Russian tourists who came to the small town of Hydra in the Kasserine region near the border with Algeria, because it's home to the ancient Roman city of Amaydara, which we were interested in exploring. At first, everything went smoothly. We registered with the police, explained the purpose of our visit. The police searched our belongings, confirmed that we had nothing suspicious with us. They approved our rental contracts for apartment and allowed us to stay in Hydra. For a month and a half, we studied the ruins of Amaydara and visited the local museum. But later, the counter-terrorism unit arrived, about a dozen vehicles, and they arrested all of us, including the 68-year-old Russian writer Minyailov, and took us to the capital. There were several reasons for this. The first, the region is dangerous. We didn't know that at first, but later we found out that for more than 10 years the area had been full of terrorists hiding in the mountains. Hardly a day passed without a police officer being killed. So now the region is under heightened security. The police also didn't understand our motives to study Amaydara. They didn't know the history of the place. They had no idea who Roman Emperor Augustus was, the one who founded the city, and asked us several times to show them a photo of him on the internet. There were also reports from local residents. For example, they were suspicious of a piece of cardboard we had put up in place of a curtain, simply because we didn't want to spend money on a new one. There was no evidence against us. The police confirmed it to our consul, who came with the lawyer on the seventh day. He wasn't able to come early because he hadn't even been informed of our arrest. The authorities claimed they were not legally allowed to make a phone call and could only conduct official correspondence. But when the consul arrived and we asked him how he found out about our arrest, he said the police had called him that morning and asked him to come. So the police lied to us at every step. And in general, they behaved very disgracefully throughout the whole period from arrest to release. They constantly mocked us, told us to treat the arrest as a fun adventure that we would remember fondly. They said prison would be no worse than a hotel. They kept repeating the phrase "Welcome to Tunisia" and laughing cheerfully. There was no evidence against us. We just seemed suspicious to the police. So they decided to check our equipment and translate all our materials. The checking of our devices and translation of materials from Russian to Arabic took time, because there was only one translator and he was paid very little. If our friends hadn't intervened, collecting money to hire a lawyer, paying the translator extra to speed things up, and hiring a second translator, we could have spent much longer in the prison, like previous group of Russian tourists who had been arrested under similar circumstances. One group spent a year and 2 months in jail, another group spent 2 years. Our consul told me this when he visited me in prison. Conditions of imprisonment. We spent the first 15 days in a pre-trial detention prison called Bushusha. It was absolute hell. Cells designed for 35 people were crammed with up to 70, especially on weekends when courts and police weren't operating and no one was being taken for questioning. There were no beds. Everyone slept on the floor on filthy mattresses. Sundays were the hardest because there was no walk time and we were forced to spend the entire day lying down. If you lifted your leg off your mattress, someone else's leg would already be in that spot. The food was disgusting. Once a day we got a piece of bread, and the second time plain pasta with no sauce or salt. We ate from dirty dishes that were only washed after the entire prison had eaten. That meant we could be eaten after a homeless person or someone sick. So we tried not to eat the prison food. The police would buy us food at our own expense. For that, they would take us to the police station, hold us for 4 or 5 hours in a tiny 3 by 3 meter cell with powerful fans blasting, so we all got sick. We had to eat and be taken back to Bushusha. Normally people spend 2-4 days in Bushusha while awaiting trial, but we were kept there for 15 days. When I told locals I spent 15 days in Bushusha, their eyes widened in horror. After that, we were all transferred to regular prisons. The woman from our group was taken to a specialized women's prison, and the men were sent to 4 different prisons. The cells were overcrowded, up to 200% capacity. As a result, most of our group didn't get beds and had to sleep on the floor. But that meant you could only sleep at night. During the day, if you tried to lie down to rest, you would block the whole passage. My friends sat there on old paint buckets in a constant draft, as there were also powerful fans, open windows and no heating. Their breath was visible in the cold air. The food wasn't as awful as in Bushusha. There was plenty of bread and a bit of soup. You could dip the bread into like a sauce. The soups were extremely spicy and full of pepper. Usually they had pasta, but occasionally we got tasty vegetable soups. Very rarely there was a sauce with a tiny piece of meat. In a week I ate as much bread as I would in half a year outside. Some cellmates shared food brought in by relatives, but most of our guys survived on nothing but prison slop. Other inmates were forbidden from speaking to us. If anyone did, they were called in for questioning and threatened with transfer to another cell where they would lose their bed and have to sleep on the floor. After Bushusha, we each had only 100 dinars left. That money ran out after a month. After that, we weren't allowed to exchange dollars to receive money from our families. As a result, we couldn't buy food, soap, coffee or cigarettes, anything. Warm clothes sent by our lawyer were also withheld. The woman in our group was sick for 2 months without any warm clothing. There was almost no medical care, only occasionally we could beg for a few pills. Dental care didn't exist. If you had a severe toothache, they gave you painkillers. Prisoners generally treated us okay, but prison is hard on everyone, and the weak were bullied, especially those who didn't understand the language or had no money. The worst off were black men Africans. They were constantly mocked and forced to wash dishes for others. I saw our consul only 2 months later. The police never told him which prisons we were in. He had to find out through unofficial channels, but even he couldn't improve our conditions. How we were released? Once all of our materials had been translated, they were sent to the investigative judge. After reviewing them, he saw that we were just ordinary tourists studying history. He decided not to take the case to the court and made the decision to release us. From the prisons we were taken to the department for the deportation of foreigners. Our confiscated laptops, phones, video cameras and money were not returned. The head of the department stated that everything had been seized. We were shocked. Why would our belongings be confiscated if we were found innocent? But it was pointless to argue with the officer. He was drunk and could barely stand. We were told that we had to leave the country within the next few hours. No plane tickets were bought for us and we weren't given any money. They told us to contact our relatives or friends through the consul and have them purchase the tickets. We tried to insist on getting our equipment and money back so we could buy tickets ourselves, and we threatened not to leave otherwise. But we was told not to argue and get out of the country as quickly as possible before they found another reason to arrest us. They said we should try to recover our belongings and money later through a lawyer. In the end, our friends bought us the tickets. Because of the urgency, the prices were 2 to 3 times higher than usual. So we returned to Moscow, are undergoing medical examinations, getting dental treatment, and trying to recover the equipment and money left behind in Tunisia. Conclusions. Naturally, after everything we have been through, we are not considering returning to Tunisia. We were arrested without any prior investigation, without a single piece of evidence, and after the arrest we were mistreated, held in horrific conditions, denied warm clothing, and not even allowed to buy basic necessities. It was clear from the beginning that this story would reach the press. In Russia, several hundred news articles were published by both national and regional media about our arrest, release, and return to Moscow. At least 100 European and international media outlets also covered the story. In the comments under these news reports, people are saying they are now afraid to travel to Tunisia after what happened. The damage to Tunisia's reputation is already immense. One would think the authorities would want to end the scandal as quickly as possible, but for some reasons, the police continue to withhold our equipment and money. Why they are doing this remains the biggest mystery to me.